The focus of today's presentation will specifically be on cloud, which is a very common, widely discussed subject, how to go about it, how to leverage it, and how we are partnering with PLDT in this part of the world to take the journey forward for the fellow CIOs who are all here. So that's the sort of focus and agenda of today's presentation. If you have any doubts, feel free to ask. Otherwise, we have got a panel later on coming up. So I'll be happy to take questions there. So before we go directly, a few market trends, and this is just to put the things in perspective. Happy to go through the details, but the idea is to just to show that qualitatively speaking, some people believe that cloud is coming, and therefore whatever infrastructure they have is all going to be junk, and they need to transform everything, throw everything, put everything new. Well, our perspective and what we have seen in the market is that for the foreseeable future, we will continue to live in a hybrid world, which means you've got your legacy and existing IT environment, and obviously the cloud is taking over. So the two have got to coexist. And as they coexist, the challenge for the CIO is to make sure that both the existing and the future services are deployed efficiently, working coherently, and at the same time responding to the business needs. More and more, we are seeing the outsourcing trend in this region as well. Some people believe that Philippines and ASEAN or Asia Pacific is lagging behind. However, we see that more and more companies are realizing that it's high time they focus on their core business, and most of the core businesses are not IT, and leave IT to other specialized players such as PLDT and Accenture. And why and how? It's purely economics. It's making more sense money-wise, operations-wise, efficiency-wise to go that way. So we are seeing that trend. And finally, as a result of all this transformation, companies have started to think how they can offer or change their own business differently. Some things they can give up, some things new they can offer, which was not possible in earlier times. Looking at the trends, this is a global chart which shows that the adoption of public cloud is increasing. When I say public cloud here, today the context of private versus public is still evolving. The reference to public cloud here means that anything that is going outside the enterprise boundaries is being classified as public cloud. Now, the numbers here are small in terms of public cloud as you compare with the yellow part, which is the existing infrastructure. I'm sorry for the text size. But in our context, which is the ASEAN market, we can clearly see that cloud is the deployment of services, or the use of cloud is really taking off in a big way. People have already started and are deploying their applications on the cloud. Some are deploying their, I would call, non-mission critical applications on the cloud, and then trying to test an experience before shifting to their mainstream mission critical applications on the cloud. And on the other hand, some have already started doing that. So it depends, of course, on the current context, how comfortable you are, how comfortable the company is, how good the infrastructure is. Raghu just stressed the importance of network, which is obviously key to cloud. So those things. Coming specifically to Philippines, the potential is large. Obviously, as Joby said, we are all coming off from a small base. But the good news is that offers a very solid upside and opportunity to adopt cloud. And while the companies are adopting cloud, how can it be made more relevant to business? And in that direction, it's more about a business decision and not a technology or an IT or a network decision, right? And in this region, Philippines, obviously, as is mentioned here, has the highest potential for cloud, one of the leading countries after Vietnam. So therefore, Accenture, along with PLDT, is focusing on this part of business a lot more seriously in a committed way than we are in other countries. But let's look at why it is happening and what are the benefits. I'm sure some of it was already mentioned earlier, but by adoption of cloud, the access is becoming, I mean, CIOs are today grappling with access problem. Thanks to people like Google and Apple, people are coming out with newer kind of devices, form factors, and the challenge is everyone wants to use their own device. Everyone wants to use it to access corporate information, not just email. And therefore, the challenge is how much and how can we adopt it, because that is very quickly becoming a reality. And thanks to technologies like VDI, technically speaking, one doesn't even need to have a corporate desktop or a notebook to run your applications. You can run it off your any device. So then the challenge becomes security, connectivity, and what can you allow, what can you not allow, and stuff like that. But nevertheless, the reality is access is one thing that cloud offers, and that has to be addressed. Along with that goes the speed. Everyone, thanks to 4G and 3G network wants instantaneous. Today, in olden times, email was a passive means of communication. Now people send an email and they expect instant reply, because they're saying, hey, you were on a 4G network, you would have seen my email. Why didn't you reply? So again, that part, there's the people and the process part, but more importantly, it's the speed part that has to be addressed. Software, it's no longer, or let me rephrase, it's transforming from the big multi-million-dollar ELA licenses to more software as a service. From a procurement standpoint, and from a consumption standpoint, it's no longer, I want a 1-second response time, and all. It's more about services. Have you met this SLA is what most of the companies are demanding. For example, marketing and sales team wants certain information to be accessed in a certain way without going through IT department. So they will all say, is it happening or not happening? They couldn't care less which application is being used, where is it being hosted, is it coming, not coming, old version, new version, upgrading. They're just saying, hey, this is the bottom line, I want this, is it happening or not? Collaboration, it's no longer about just sending emails. We all know there's about WebEx and all kinds of Link and Yammer and Jabber and all those kind of applications which are allowing a lot more collaboration. So once again, all this is happening or being enabled by cloud-based deployments. App Store, agility goes along with that, and obviously by going through all this, one has to make sure that you are still complying with or compliance laws and other requirements are being followed. So this is just gives you a few sort of, I wouldn't call it benefits, but how changes are coming about as a result of cloud or the internet-based services being deployed more and more. What we believe is that, it's no longer a technology decision that, oh, my data center is full, I've got enough of CapEx already spent, so let me do something else and go and adopt the cloud. It's actually more of a business decision. One has to look at why I should do it. The basic starting point is strategy, why you want to do it and why one should do it. And then once we do it, what will be, why should you do it? What is the business value? Purely measured in terms of dollars and benefit to the company. It's no longer an IT decision. The third part, which is very, very critical, is the operations part. How is it impacting people? Is it forcing people to change any business process? Obviously, making it more easy, because if it is more difficult, nobody will buy. And finally, then implementation, which is the technology part. So the key point is implementation is right at the fag end of the cycle. It's not that, oh, we have got a private cloud, let's go and try it and then figure out what are the benefits, and let's go and then talk to people that, instead of filling 5 forms offline, now you need to fill 1 form online. All that has to be done right in the beginning, so that then implementation is just a mechanical way of deploying that change. This is something very critical in this part of the world that we have seen, that from a cultural standpoint, from a people management standpoint, it's very, very important to get all the stakeholders on board. And by stakeholders, I don't mean just the CFO should be on board to sign the check. More importantly, the line of business functions, whether it is operations or sales or marketing or production or even your third-party suppliers and so on, they have to be bought in. They should clearly understand what is in it for them before you move on to the next mechanics of how you want to do it and who should be your partner and stuff like that. This is what we have been sort of involved in, and what we have seen is that the companies who have this kind of adoption cycle have seen this kind of cloud-based projects a lot more successful in terms of adoption and implementation, rather than the ones who said, oh, I've got this very good offer from this company for private cloud and it's a 6-month window, let me go and deploy it and then figure it out, because then the change becomes a lot more painful and the project ROI is not clear to people, and people wonder, why am I doing it and is it all justified? And one failed project, then you are setting yourself back by a few years already. So in order to do that, what we do, and this is where we are collaborating with PLDT, is to sit down with companies and this is again, don't want to dwell too much on it, but the focus is to make sure that we want to make sure that the companies go through why you are doing it, have a solid business case, make sure that all the right people are bought in. One has to draw the boundaries very clearly, which ones and how you want to go it, in what phases, what timeline, what are the results you want to achieve, and then plan the deployment and implementation. So once again, I can't stress more saying the last part is the easiest part. There are enough players in the market from an IT perspective to help you through the last part. The key is to make sure you think through the business case and the operational part before diving into the technology part. And once you are, or one has decided to go down the path of implementing the cloud, we broadly classify the journey of cloud adoption into 3 phases. The first part is the operational part, so you quickly make sure that whatever is the IT infrastructure, how can you reduce and optimize the infrastructure and therefore have cost savings. The second part is where you look at the business processes. Is there a way to save people's time or money by simplifying the business processes, eliminating the few processes that were there earlier, and introduce new ones which are easy to do and a lot more, less ones that are delegated to fewer people. In other words, instead of an approval or a request flowing through 5 people approving, can it happen in an automated way and without compromising on hierarchy and approval process? I'm not saying that don't take approval from your boss. It's about defining the business rules beforehand so that if your boss is sleeping or on holiday, the thing doesn't get stuck. And if you're not authorized, fine, end of process. When the guy comes back, then you sort of move on. And finally, the third part is as the cloud is being deployed, look at, and the slide here says CEO, but by no means it is limiting to CEO. Look by how cloud can enable the companies to offer services that were not possible earlier. For example, DHL, the phone line for having a real-time call to track your shipment is virtually non-existent because it's all online. And this online service is not hosted in some huge big DHL owned data centers. They are all hosted over the cloud, and depending on where the packet originates from and where the packet is supposed to be delivered, the hosting of that information dynamically changes. So therefore the access becomes easier, and you don't need to call anybody. There is no personal approval or interjection in the way. You have your packet ID, and from that you can just track where is it going real time because of this technology. So this has allowed them to offer this kind of service to their customers, which was not possible earlier. Earlier you had to dial 1-800 number, and the guy will maybe put you on hold for 20 minutes at the middle of the night and then try to tell you something which is again maybe your one-day-old news. So this is where companies are leveraging cloud and trying to offer new kind of services which were not possible earlier. In the case of IT, for example, when IT outsourcing started, it was more about CPU as a service, storage as a service, and so on. So it was like basic compute or storage, and obviously Raghu will agree, network as well cannot be ignored. But today it's more about disaster recovery as a service. So it's one kind of service that you directly consume that is being offered by businesses because they are thinking how they can leverage cloud and offer these kind of services to the companies. There are various kind of services that we offer. This is not a sales pitch, but just like to tell you that there are, when the cloud is being deployed, there are various elements that have to be looked upon. It's not just about the strategy, but obviously more about the software as a service, platform as a service, and how are you going about it. So these are the various factors that every company has to consider in various stages of adoption, depending on your market reality, depending on where you want to focus, how your customers are behaving, and how are they consuming, and how your competitors are behaving. The thing I would like to stress upon here is the infrastructure part, which is where Accenture and PLDT are collaborating, because the backbone of this entire cloud is infrastructure, and our definition of infrastructure is compute, storage, network, and the interrelated processes that go in between, along focusing on the data center. So what we are propagating is that in order for cloud to function, there has to be a backbone or a data center sort of backend service that has all these elements in terms of monitoring, predicting, self-healing, because the speed of service delivery has changed. The expectations of your customers will change. For example, going back to my DHL example, people key in their shipment number and they want an instant response, what is happening real time. It's no longer putting a person on hold and then reverting back. So the infrastructure has to respond in a way that meets the customer expectations. So for that to happen, it has to have an infrastructure, as I said earlier, which is predictive, self-healing, optimizing, and obviously is reasonably secure. And it cuts across whether you are having workplace, so all about the front-end applications, whether it is office or email or sharing and collaborating sort of thing, or data center or network, security, everything. So it cuts across all the elements of infrastructure, but it has got to be agile enough to respond to the needs of today. Again, people are leveraging these services that can go off-premise versus on-premise. Once again, we, as I mentioned earlier, we foresee that both the traditional infrastructure and the cloud infrastructure will coexist. There will be a hybrid environment, and therefore it gives an opportunity for the CIO organization or the IT organization to look at how best you can leverage it without junking the old stuff, at the same time adopting the new stuff in phases and making sure that, while you are doing this transition or upgrade or adoption, the quality of service does not suffer and the business expectations are met. As I said, our approach is very focused along with PLDT on the data center, and in order for us to make sure that we are looking at the existing infrastructure and also looking at the cloud adoption, that we go about in a methodical way, looking at the business case first. Obviously, it's once again, this is not an IT project. It's more about how is it helping the business, and going about it in a way, the 3 stages that I mentioned earlier, just mentioned here in a different way, going about automation, optimization, then sort of implementing the cloud, and finally looking at possibility of outsourcing. We have seen in this part of the world that more and more businesses are realizing that IT is not their core business. Once again, I don't mean to say it means shut off your CIO organization. What it means is the CIO organization can focus more on their company's business requirements. How are they changing? What are the expectations? If the expectations are changing, how can they be met? And then there are enough IT companies of various hues and colors who are available to help you deliver that expectations of an IT infrastructure and the services to your people. So consider outsourcing to whoever vendor you are comfortable with, which will include off-premise hosting, services that can be rented, all tied down to business SLAs. It's no longer about buying big chunk of licenses or big chunk of server or storage. It's all about focusing on your operational expenses, saving on your capex, and measuring the outcome by SLAs. That's what we are seeing very clearly, and it just helps in setting the expectations internally within your businesses, and also as you are dealing with suppliers. It's no longer about delivering a product or delivering a software code and then walking away. It's about delivering a service and standing by it. Just like to share how the journey has been with a few of our clients. Telstra, as we all know, is a leading telecom service provider in Australia. Now, of course, they are across the world. So when they started adopting the cloud, this was again, going back to my previous slide, their focus was to just optimize and look at their operational expenses and then see how they can graduate to the next level. Once we went through the project, they saw they were able to reduce their capital expenses by 70%. Today, they consume infrastructure in an OPEX mode as a service mode. It's no longer about writing multi-million-dollar capital expense checks every year. Because of wide cloud adoption, they not only adopted it internally, they are now offering various cloud services to the market. Obviously, it has also helped them to expand out of Australia, and they are now a leading player of IT services across Asia. They've got big data centers across the world outside Australia and places like Singapore and so on. So this again, they started with basics. It was not about junking what they already had. It was more about first looking at the business case, changing the consumption model, getting the internal users on board, and then sort of moving ahead. This is again one of the leading chemical clients of Accenture that we had. They wanted to make sure this was more about the first few parts, getting the strategy right, building the business case, getting the operational people on board, and having the entire cloud framework ready before they actually go into the implementation part. And they spent a lot of time and effort in making sure that they got it right, and the end result was that they were able to get most of the services well deployed when the implementation happened, and therefore the adoption went pretty smooth. Finally, once again, a global environment company, telco. This was more about consolidating and optimizing their infrastructure across the operations they had in multiple countries, and seeing how they were able to save cost and once again move to the next level of offering various kind of business services to the market. So that's all I had to share with you in terms of importance of the business side of the cloud, the operational side of the cloud, and how companies are changing. And in this part of the market, Accenture works very closely with PLDT in bringing all these services that we mentioned to the market for you. So thank you very much for your time.